Hello family, welcome to Folktales Africa. Please subscribe and leave a like for us. It means the whole world to us. Also, share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you. As you do so, sit back and relax as we dive into this incredible story of justice, humility, and unexpected revelations. The sterile white walls of St. Mary's Private Hospital echoed with the sound of expensive heels clicking against the marble floors. Dr. Richard Okafor, the hospital's arrogant owner, stood towering over a small woman in a faded nursing uniform, his voice booming with authority. "You are fired," he shouted, his face red with anger. "How dare you treat patients who can't pay? This is a business, not a charity." Nurse Blessing Adebayo stood quietly, her hands folded, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. Around them, other staff members watched in shocked silence as the woman who had dedicated 15 years of her life to healing was publicly humiliated. "Please, sir," Blessing whispered. "She was just a child. She was dying." "I don't care if she was dying," Richard snarled. "No payment, no treatment. That is the rule." But Richard Okafor had no idea that in just 3 weeks, his own mother would be fighting for her life, and the only person with the skills to save her would be the same nurse he was throwing out like garbage. This story started 3 months earlier. The morning sun cast long shadows across the bustling streets of Lagos as Blessing Adebayo made her way to St. Mary's Private Hospital. At 42, she moved to the grace of someone who had learned to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her nursing uniform, though worn from years of washing, was spotlessly clean and pressed with care. Blessing lived in a small two-bedroom apartment in Mushin with her elderly mother, Mama Adebayo, and her younger brother, Emeka, who was studying to become a teacher. Every morning, she would rise at 4 a.m. to prepare breakfast for her family, iron her uniform, and review the medical journals she bought with her hard-earned money. "Blessing, my daughter," Mama Adebayo would say as she watched her daughter prepare for work. "You have the hands of an angel. God has blessed you with the gift of healing." Blessing would smile and kiss her mother's forehead. "Mama, I just do what I can. Every patient is someone's child, someone's parents. How can I turn away from suffering?" At the hospital, Blessing was known for her exceptional skills. She could start an IV on the most difficult patients, comfort a crying child with just a touch, and work longer hours than anyone else without complaint. The doctors respected her knowledge, and the patients loved her gentle manner. But there was one person who saw Blessing differently. Dr. Richard Okafor, the hospital's owner, was a man who measured everything in naira and kobo. Tall, broad-shouldered, and always impeccably dressed in designer suits, he strutted through the hospital like a king surveying his kingdom. At 38, he had inherited the hospital from his father but had none of the elder man's compassion for the poor. "This hospital is a business," he would announce during staff meetings, his gold watch glinting as he gestured. "We are not running a charity. Every treatment, every medication, every minute of care must be paid for. If they can't afford it, they can go to the general hospital." Richard lived in a massive mansion in Banana Island, drove the latest Range Rover, and spent his weekends at exclusive clubs. He had never known hunger, never felt the desperation of watching a loved one suffer because he couldn't afford medical care. The other nurses whispered about his cold heart. He cares more about his car than his patients, they would say. But Blessing always remained quiet. She focused on her job, on the patients who needed her. It was a Tuesday morning when 8-year-old Chioma was brought to the emergency room. The little girl was burning with fever, her small body convulsing with seizures. Her mother, Ada, was a widow who sold tomatoes at the local market to support her 3 children. Please, nurse, Ada begged, clutching Blessing's arm. She's dying. Please help her. Blessing took one look at the child and knew she was suffering from severe malaria that had progressed to cerebral malaria. Without immediate treatment, Chioma would die within hours. Where is her father? Dr. Chidi, the attending physician, asked quietly. He died last year. Ada sobbed. I have some money, but not enough for private treatment. They told me to come here because the general hospital is full. Dr. Chidi looked at Blessing, then at the dying child. They both knew what they had to do. Start the IV, Dr. Chidi whispered. I will handle the paperwork later. Blessing walked quickly, her experience and starting the IV line and administering the life-saving medication. Within hours, Chioma's fever broke and she opened her eyes. Mama, she whispered. Ada fell to her knees, tears of joy streaming down her face. Thank you, God. Thank you, nurse. But their joy was short-lived. The next morning, Richard Okafor stormed into the ward, his face dark with anger. Who authorized treatment for this child? He demanded, waving the medical chart in the air. Silence fell over the ward. The other nurses looked away, but Blessing stepped forward. I did, sir. She was dying. Richard's eyes narrowed. Did she pay? Her mother paid what she could, sir. We can work out a payment plan. A payment plan. Richard laughed bitterly. This is not a social welfare scheme, Nurse Adebayo. This is a private hospital. We don't treat patients who can't pay. But, sir, she is just a child. She would have died. That is not my problem, Richard snapped. If every nurse in this hospital starts treating patients for free, we will be bankrupt in a month. You are lucky I don't fire you right now. Blessing felt her heart break a little. She looked at little Chioma, now sitting up and drawing pictures, very much alive because of the care she had received. I understand, sir, she said quietly. But Richard wasn't finished. Let me be clear, Nurse Adebayo. If I hear of you treating another patient who can't pay in full, you will be out of here faster than you can say charity case. Do I make myself clear? Yes, sir. As Richard stormed away, Blessing noticed he had a phone call. She heard him speaking to someone, his voice immediately softening. Yes, Mama, I'll be there for dinner on Sunday. Yes, I will bring the wine you like. Even bullies have mothers, Blessing thought to herself. She wondered what kind of woman had raised such a heartless man. Over the following weeks, Blessing watched as Richard's no payment, no treatment policy created a trail of misery. Patients were turned away at the door, their desperate pleas falling on deaf ears. The hospital's reputation for excellence remained intact, but its soul was dying. Blessing tried to follow the rules, but her conscience wouldn't let her rest. When she wasn't on duty, she would volunteer at the general hospital, helping overwhelmed nurses with their impossible patient loads. She used her own money to buy medications for patients who couldn't afford them. One evening, as she was leaving the hospital, she encountered Mrs. Okonkwo, an elderly woman who cleaned offices in the area. Mrs. Okonkwo was supporting her pregnant daughter, who was clearly in distress. Nurse Blessing, Mrs. Okonkwo called out, "Please, my daughter is in labor, but something is wrong. They won't let us into the hospital without payment." Blessing looked at the young woman, who was barely 18 and clearly experiencing complications. Her training told her that both mother and baby were in danger. "How much do you have?" Blessing asked quietly. "Only 10,000 naira," Mrs. Okonkwo replied, tears in her eyes. "The admission fee alone is 50,000 naira." Blessing made a decision that would change everything. She quietly led them through a side entrance and helped them into an empty room. Working with Dr. Chidi, who had become an ally in these secret missions of mercy, they delivered a healthy baby boy. The young mother wept with gratitude. "God bless you, Nurse Blessing. You saved both our lives." But their celebration was short-lived. The next morning, Richard's assistant, Nurse Gladys, reported what she had witnessed. "Sir, I saw Nurse Adebayo bringing in patients through the back entrance again. She has been doing this for weeks." Richard's face darkened. "Is that so?" The confrontation came during the morning rounds. Richard Okafor swept into the ward like a storm, his expensive shoes clicking against the floor. Behind him trailed his assistant and the head of security. "Nurse Adebayo," he called out, his voice echoing through the ward. "A word." Blessing excused herself from the patient she was attending and walked over, her heart pounding but her face calm. "I understand you have been treating patients who haven't paid," Richard said, his voice dangerously low. "Sir, don't lie to me," he exploded. "I have witnesses. You've been sneaking charity cases into my hospital, wasting my resources, using my equipment and medications without authorization." The entire ward fell silent. Patients in their beds turned to watch the drama unfold. Other nurses stopped their work, their faces tense with fear and sympathy. "Sir, these were emergency cases. People would have died. I told you before. That is not my problem." Richard's voice rose to a shout. "This is a business, not a charity. Every medication, every treatment, every minute of time costs money." Blessing felt her composure cracking. "So you would let a baby die because his mother can't pay?" "Yes," Richard snapped. "If she can't pay, she should go to the general hospital. That is what government hospitals are for." Government hospitals that don't have enough beds, enough staff, enough equipment. Blessing's voice was shaking now. "You know they are overwhelmed. You know people die waiting for care." "That is not my responsibility." Richard pounded his fist on the nurse's station. "My responsibility is to run a profitable hospital, not to save every sub-story that walks through the door." An older patient, Mr. Okoye, who had been receiving treatment for diabetes, spoke up from his bed. "Dr. Okafor, this nurse saved my life when I couldn't afford my medication. She what?" Richard whirled around. "She gave you free medication? She treated you without payment?" Mr. Okoye realized he had made a mistake. "Sir, how many others?" Richard's eyes were wild now. How many other patients has she been treating for free? Blessing stepped forward. Sir, please don't blame the patients. This is my fault. I made the decisions. You are damn right you did. Richard snarled. And now you are going to pay for them. He turned to address the entire world, his voice carrying to every corner. Let this be a lesson to everyone. This hospital has rules. Payment in full before treatment. No exceptions. No sub stories. No charity cases. He pointed a finger at Blessing. And you, Nurse Adebayo, consider this your final warning. One more incident and you are gone. Despite the public humiliation, Blessing couldn't stop caring. She began to work more carefully, more secretly. She developed a network of compassionate doctors and nurses who shared her values. Dr. Chidi remained her closest ally, along with Nurse Patience, a young woman who had been inspired by Blessing's courage. Sister Blessing, Patience whispered one evening as they changed shifts. There is a woman outside. Her husband had an accident. She has no money for surgery. Blessing closed her eyes. She thought of her mother's words. You have the hands of an angel. She thought of the oath she had taken when she became a nurse. First, do no harm. Where is she? Blessing asked. They met in the hospital's small chapel, a place Richard rarely visited. The woman, Mrs. Emeka, was in her 30s, her eyes red from crying. Please, nurse, she begged. My husband is bleeding inside. They said he needs surgery now or he will die. But I don't have the money. I have sold everything, borrowed from everyone. I have nothing left. Blessing held the woman's hands. Where is he now? At the general hospital, but they don't have the equipment for the surgery. They sent me here. Blessing made her decision. Bring him here. Come through the back entrance at midnight. I will have everything ready. That night, Blessing and Dr. Chidi performed the surgery that saved Miss Emeka's life. They walked by the light of a small lamp, their hands steady despite the risk they were taking. If we are caught, Dr. Chidi whispered, we'll both be fired. Then, we'll find another way to help people, Blessing replied. While Blessing was risking everything to save lives, Richard Okafor was living his best life. He had just purchased a new Lamborghini and was planning a vacation to Dubai. His social media accounts were filled with photos of expensive dinners, designer clothes, and luxury vacations. But on a quiet Sunday evening, his world was about to change forever. Richard was at his exclusive club, sipping champagne and laughing with his wealthy friends when his phone rang. The caller ID showed Mama. Richard, my son. His mother's voice was weak, strained. I need you to come home. Something is wrong. Richard's mother, Mrs. Ngozi Okafor, was 75 years old and had been suffering from various health issues. She lived in a comfortable house in Victoria Island, cared for by a team of housekeepers and a private nurse. When Richard arrived at his mother's house, he found her in severe distress. She was having difficulty breathing. Her blood pressure was dangerously high and she was experiencing chest pains. Mama, what happened? Richard asked, his voice filled with concern. I don't know, she whispered. The pain started this morning and it is getting worse. Richard immediately called his personal physician, Dr. Adeleke, who arrived within minutes. After examining Mrs. Okafor, Dr. Adeleke's face was grave. Richard, your mother is having a serious cardiac event. She needs immediate surgery. We need to get her to the hospital now. At St. Mary's Hospital, Mrs. Okafor was rushed into the cardiac unit. The best doctors worked to stabilize her condition, but the news was not good. Richard, Dr. Adeleke said quietly, your mother needs a very complex procedure. Her heart is failing and she needs immediate valve replacement surgery. But there is a problem. What problem? Richard demanded. Money is no object. Do whatever it takes. It is not about money, Dr. Adeleke explained. The surgery is extremely delicate. It requires a specialized cardiac nurse who can assist with the procedure and provide post-operative care. We need someone with very specific skills. Then get them, Richard said. Hire whoever you need. Dr. Adeleke looked uncomfortable. There is only one nurse in Lagos with the exact qualifications we need. She has 15 years of experience in cardiac care, specialized training in post-operative monitoring, and hands-on experience with this specific procedure. Who is she? Richard demanded. Nurse Blessing Adebayo. Richard's face went white. No, absolutely not. There must be someone else. Richard, I've checked with every hospital in the city. There are other good cardiac nurses, but none with our exact combination of skills and experience. Your mother's condition is critical. We can't wait to train someone else. Richard felt the world spinning around him. The woman he had humiliated, threatened, and nearly fired was the only person who could save his mother's life. Richard spent the next 2 days frantically searching for alternatives. He called hospitals in Abuja, Port Harcourt, even London and New York, but the message was always the same. His mother was too unstable to travel and time was running out. Meanwhile, Mrs. Okafor's condition continued to deteriorate. She drifted in and out of consciousness, her breathing becoming more labored with each passing hour. My son, she whispered during one of her lucid moments, I am not afraid to die. I've lived a good life, but I want you to know something. Don't talk like that, Mama, Richard said, holding her hand. You are going to be fine. Listen to me, she said with more strength than he had heard in days. I've been watching you, Richard. The way you run the hospital, the way you treat people, that was not how I raised you. Richard shifted uncomfortably. Mama, you need to rest. Your father built that hospital to help people, she continued. All people, rich and poor. When did you forget that? Richard had never told his mother about his policy of refusing treatment to patients who couldn't pay. He had always presented himself as a successful businessman, never mentioning the desperate families he turned away. Mama, I run a business. I have to make decisions. I knew about the nurse, Mrs. Okafor interrupted. Blessing Adebayo. Richard's heart stopped. What do you know about her? She treated me once, his mother said quietly. 3 years ago, when I collapsed at the market, I was dressed like a common woman. No expensive clothes, no jewelry. No one knew who I was. Richard listened in shocked silence. I was buying vegetables for the house, his mother continued. I wanted to see how the common people lived, what they went through. I collapsed from exhaustion. When the ambulance brought me to your hospital, I heard the staff arguing about payment. Mama, why didn't you tell them who you were? Because I wanted to see what would happen, she said. And Nurse Blessing Adebayo, without knowing who I was, fought to get me treated. She said, "This is someone's mother. How can we turn her away?" Richard felt his world crumbling. "You never told me." "I wanted to see if you would do the right thing," his mother said. "But when I saw how the hospital refused to treat the poor, I knew I had failed as a mother. I raised a son who forgot how to love people." Tears fell from Richard's eyes. "Mama, I am sorry." "Don't apologize to me," she whispered. "Apologize to her. And if you want to save my life, you will have to swallow your pride and ask for help from the woman you have treated so badly." Richard Okafor had never felt smaller in his life. He sat in his Range Rover outside Blessing's small apartment building in Mushin, his hands shaking as he tried to gather the courage to knock on her door. The neighborhood was nothing like his wealthy enclave. Children played in the narrow streets. Women carried water buckets on their heads, and the air was filled with the sounds and smells of everyday life. For the first time, Richard was seeing how most people lived. He climbed the narrow stairs to the second floor and knocked on the door marked Adebayo. Blessing opened the door, her eyes widening in shock when she saw her boss standing in her doorway. "Dr. Okafor," she said, confusion evident in her voice. "What are you doing here?" Richard had rehearsed this moment 100 times, but now the words stuck in his throat. Behind Blessing, he could see a modest living room where an elderly woman sat watching television. "Blessing," he said, his voice cracking, "my mother is dying." Blessing's expression softened immediately. Despite everything Richard had done to her, her first instinct was compassion. "I am sorry to hear that," she said gently. "What can I do to help?" Richard's carefully planned speech crumbled. "She needs surgery, cardiac valve replacement. The doctors say you are the only nurse in Lagos with the right experience." Blessing was quiet for a moment. "Dr. Okafor, you fired me 3 days ago, remember? You said I was too soft-hearted to work in your hospital." "I know," Richard said, his voice barely a whisper. "I know what I said. I know what I did, but please, I am begging you. My mother is dying." Blessing looked at this powerful man, now humbled and desperate, standing in her doorway. She thought of all the times he had humiliated her, all the patients he had refused to treat, all the suffering he had caused. "Your mother," she said slowly, "can she pay for the surgery?" Richard looked confused. "Of course she can pay. Money is no object." "But what if she couldn't?" Blessing interrupted. "What if she was just a poor woman with no money? Would you expect me to save her then?" Richard understood. He closed his eyes and felt the weight of his own words coming back to haunt him. "I deserve that," he said. "I deserve your anger. I deserve to be turned away. But please, don't let my mother die because of my mistakes." From inside the apartment, Mama Adebayo called out, "Blessing, who is at the door?" Blessing turned to her mother. Mama, it's my boss. His mother is sick. The elderly woman appeared beside her daughter, studying Richard with wise eyes. You are the one who treats my daughter badly at work. Richard felt exposed under her gaze. Yes, ma'am, I am. And now you want her help. Yes, ma'am. Mama Adebayo looked at her daughter. What does your heart tell you, my child? Blessing was quiet for a moment. My heart tells me that every patient is someone's child, someone's parent, even if their child doesn't deserve mercy. She turned back to Richard. I will help your mother, but I have conditions. Anything, Richard said immediately. First, you will reinstate me as a nurse at the hospital with a formal apology to the staff. Done. Second, you will change the hospital's policy. No patient will be turned away in an emergency, regardless of their ability to pay. Richard hesitated. That could bankrupt the hospital. Then, you will find a way to make it work. Set up a charity fund. Apply for government assistance. Work with other hospitals. There are solutions if you want to find them. Richard thought of his mother's words about the hospital's original mission. Agreed. Third, you will establish a free clinic for the poor. 1 day a week, every week. Blessing, those are my conditions, she said firmly. Your mother's life is worth more than your profit margin, isn't it? Richard nodded. Yes, yes, it is. 2 hours later, Blessing was back at St. Mary's Hospital, but this time she walked through the front door with her head held high. The other nurses watched in amazement as Richard Okafor personally escorted her to the cardiac unit. Dr. Adeleke, Richard said, I would like you to meet our head cardiac nurse, Blessing Adebayo. Dr. Adeleke smiled with relief. Nurse Adebayo, thank you for coming. We have prepared everything for the surgery. Blessing quickly reviewed Mrs. Okafor's chart and examined the patient. The elderly woman was barely conscious, but when she heard Blessing's voice, she opened her eyes. You are the nurse from the market, she whispered. Yes, ma'am, Blessing replied gently. I am going to take care of you. I told Richard about that day, Mrs. Okafor said, about how you fought for me. Blessing smiled. Every patient deserves to be fought for. The surgery lasted 6 hours. It was complex and delicate, requiring all of Blessing's skill and experience. She worked alongside the surgical team, monitoring every vital sign, anticipating every need. Her steady hands and calm presence providing the expertise that made the difference between life and death. Richard waited in the hospital corridor, pacing back and forth. For the first time in his adult life, he was completely powerless. His money, his connections, his authority meant nothing. His mother's life was in the hands of the woman he had tried to destroy. Dr. Chidi approached him during the surgery. Sir, I wanted to thank you for bringing Nurse Blessing back. She is the best we have. Richard looked at the young doctor. You worked with her on the charity cases, didn't you? Dr. Chidi hesitated, then nodded. Yes, sir. I know it was against the policy, but you did the right thing, Richard said quietly. I was wrong about everything. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, The surgery was over. Dr. Adeleke emerged from the operating room, exhaustion evident on his face but smiling. The surgery was successful, he announced. Your mother is stable. She's going to make a full recovery. Richard felt his knees buckle with relief. Can I see her? In a few minutes, Nurse Adebayo is getting her settled in the recovery room. 3 days later, Mrs. Okafor was sitting up in bed, color returning to her cheeks. Blessing was adjusting her IV when Richard entered the room, carrying a large bouquet of flowers. Mama, how are you feeling? He asked, kissing his mother's forehead. Much better, my son. Thanks to this angel, she said, passing Blessing's hand. Richard turned to Blessing. I owe you an apology, a public one. That afternoon, Richard called all the hospital staff together in the main conference room. Doctors, nurses, administrative staff, and even the cleaning crew gathered, wondering what this unusual meeting was about. Richard stood before them, his usual arrogance replaced by humility. I have called you all here because I need to make an apology. I've been wrong about a lot of things and I need to make them right. He looked directly at Blessing. Nurse Adebayo, I publicly humiliated you for having compassion. I threatened to fire you for saving lives. I was wrong and I am sorry. The room was silent, everyone holding their breath. From today forward, this hospital will have a new policy. No patients will be turned away in an emergency, regardless of their ability to pay. We will establish a charity fund to cover the cost. Murmurs of amazement rippled through the crowd. Furthermore, we'll be opening a free clinic 1 day a week, and I am promoting Nurse Adebayo to head of the new charity ward. The room erupted in applause. Blessing felt tears streaming down her face as her colleagues surrounded her with congratulations. But Richard wasn't finished. I want everyone to understand something. This hospital was built by my father to serve all people, not just the wealthy. I lost sight of that mission, but I won't lose sight of it again. He turned to Blessing. Nurse Adebayo, would you accept the position as head of charitable services? The salary is double what you were making before. Blessing wiped her tears and smiled. I accept, but I have one request. Anything. I want to invite some of the patients we have helped to the opening ceremony. They should know that their lives matter. Of course, Richard nodded. They should all be there. 6 months later, St. Mary's Hospital was buzzing with excitement. The grand opening of the new charitable wing was about to open, and the hospital was filled with patients, families, and community members who had been touched by the change. Little Chioma, the first patient Blessing had secretly treated, was there with her mother, Ada. Mr. Emeka, whose life had been saved by the midnight surgery, stood by his wife and their new baby. Mrs. Okonkwo was there with her daughter and grandchild. Dozens of other patients who had been helped by Blessing's network of compassion filled the hospital corridors. Blessing, now wearing a crisp new uniform with Head of Charitable Services embroidered on it, stood at the podium to address the crowd. Richard sat in the front row next to his mother, who had made a complete recovery. 6 months ago, Blessing began. I believed that healing was just about medicine and procedures. I have learned that healing is also about hope, dignity, and love. She looked at Richard. I want to thank Dr. Okafor for having the courage to change, for choosing compassion over profit, for remembering that every person who walks through our doors is someone's precious child. The crowd applauded as Richard stood up, his face showing the transformation that had taken place in his heart. I want to thank Nurse Adebayo, he said, for showing me that true wealth isn't measured in money but in the lives we touch and the difference we make. As the ceremony concluded, Richard pulled Blessing aside. I have something to tell you, he said. The hospital is more profitable now than it ever was before. Blessing looked surprised. How is that possible? When word spread about our charitable work, wealthy patients started choosing us over other hospitals. They want to be part of something meaningful. We are not losing money on charity cases. We are gaining trust and reputation. Blessing smiled. So, doing the right thing is also good business. The best business, Richard agreed. My father would be proud. As the sun set over Lagos, Blessing stood in the charity ward, watching as nurses cared for patients regardless of their ability to pay. Children played in the pediatric ward. Elderly patients received dignity along with their medication, and families who had been turned away from other hospitals found hope within these walls. Dr. Chidi approached her with a chat. Sister Blessing, we have a new patient. She's a young mother who needs surgery, but she has no money. Blessing smiled and took the chat. Then, let's get her the help she needs. That is what we are here for. Richard watched from the doorway, thinking of his mother's words. Every patient is someone's child, someone's parent. He had learned that lesson almost too late, but he had learned it. The hospital his father had built to serve all people was finally living up to its mission. And the nurse who had been fired for having too much compassion was now leading the charge to heal not just bodies but hearts and souls. As Blessing made her rounds that evening, she stopped at every patient's bedside, holding hands, offering comfort, and providing the kind of care that can't be bought or sold. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. You have the hands of an angel. She smiled to herself. Perhaps she did, and now, finally, she had the support to use them. Thank you for watching this video. What did you learn from this story? Drop it in the comments. Please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to Raw Tales Africa for more inspiring tales of justice, redemption, and the power of compassion. Remember, every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Choose kindness, choose mercy, choose love. Until next time, keep believing in the power of doing good.